We're live from Lagos, Nigeria. This is News Central. I'm Felicity as we get the top stories tonight. Tinubu orders arrest, suspends 3 permanent secretaries as ICPC uncovers fake agency in office of secretary to the government of the Federation. FBI asks U.S. courts to keep records linked to alleged drug trafficking probe involving President Bola Tinubu secret. And UK forecasters warn of potentially record-breaking El Nino with heightened risks of extreme weather worldwide.
And in business, Dangote Refinery raises petrol prices again, with PMS gantry price up 20 naira to 1,185 naira per litre effective midnight.
And in sports news tonight, British heavyweight Tyson Fury cast doubt over a much-anticipated clash with rival Anthony Joshua after both camps failed to reach an agreement on key issues.
Very glad you're here with us. Tonight begins shortly. A fresh corruption probe is rocking the heart of Nigeria's bureaucracy, with President Bola Tinubu ordering the immediate arrest of a man, George Nwabueze, accused of running a fake government agency from within the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The president also ordered the suspension of 3 permanent secretaries following fresh findings by the ICPC into alleged fake government agencies and weaknesses in public service processes. The development follows the earlier discovery of the purported Presidential Foreign Investment Promotion Council, which the presidency said had no legal executive foundation. Investigators later uncovered suspected forged government documents and additional fictitious bodies, prompting the Federal Executive Council to order a comprehensive forensic audit of government processes and internal controls.
Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, has uncovered another fake agency and office operating under the name National Brands Development and Mandates in the Nigeria Special Project Office, which had been illegally allocated office space within the premises of the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The fake agency/office, National Brands Development and Made in Nigeria Special Project Office, was promoted by one George Nwabueze, with active suspected collaborators in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, contrary to the external laws and without authorization of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The promoter, George Nwabueze, was discovered to also operate under 4 other variations of his name: George Nathan Nwabueze, Honorable George Nwabueze, Prince George Nwabueze, and George Nwabueze. Mr. President has directed as follows: A. Immediate arrest of Prince George Nwabueze. B. Immediate suspension of the following permanent secretaries: 1. MS Njuma. 2. Engineer Ndungu Gagari. 3. Richard P. Pilengwa.
Interesting times indeed. Let's move away from that now and go over to the United States, where a fresh legal twist has emerged and is putting the spotlight once again on the long-running allegations surrounding President Bola Tinubu, with the FBI asking a U.S. court to explain behind closed doors why some records remain secret. The FBI says releasing the records could expose law enforcement techniques and potentially endanger individuals. But the move comes after a 2025 ruling in which Judge Bell Howell ordered the FBI and the DEA to lift their refusal to confirm whether Tinubu had been a subject of criminal investigation. Now, the FBI wants to justify some of its withholding privately under seal. The records dating to the early 1990s are being sought through Freedom of Information Act requests. Tonight, we ask what exactly is being withheld. Joining us live from our Abuja studio for this story is legal practitioner and good governance campaigner, Abdulkareem Musa. Abdulkareem, thank you for being here. If you were sitting on that bench, would you grant the FBI's request to explain its reasons for withholding these records privately? Or does that undermine the very principle of transparency of the Freedom of Information law, which is it supposed to protect?
Good evening, Felicity. Thank you for having me. Well, if I was sitting on that bench, the first thing to put to mind is the fact that this is a very sensitive and politically delicate matter. And the records that we are talking about or that is being demanded are records that could have alternative outcomes. And so the records could vindicate President Tinubu and put an end to the allegations, the accusation, and political insinuations that is involved in drugs. The record is also capable of causing very serious and reputational embarrassment and damage to not just the individual of Tinubu, but to the entirety of the Nigerian citizens. And so, having that in mind, then you must proceed from the perspective of political transparency, the consideration of legal disclosure, and the right of the other parties to fair hearing in assessing this application that they want to have the record head ex parte. And so if having this against the backdrop of all these points I've highlighted, I think as a judge, I would first demand to see the documents because the judge constitutes part of the state. And so the FBI would not lay claim to documents that are in their possession and deny the judge the opportunity of assessing the documents and determining whether these documents are requiring of the secrecy that the FBI are claiming that they do.
But how do you distinguish legitimate national security or personal safety concern from a convenient excuse for withholding what some would describe as embarrassing information?
Yes, it might seem to me like a convenient excuse and an escape. But what the FBI, in my opinion, must bear in mind is that there is an entire sovereign state, a sovereign nation, anticipating the content of this record that is being demanded. Nigerians are not just spectators in this whole controversy. Nigerians are a constituency whose legitimacy, whose mandate give President Tinubu legitimacy to be president of Nigeria. And so it might be a convenient position for the FBI to simply claim that the contents of this document occasion insecurity to some individuals and that the content reveal their security strategies. But the question we must ask, or the FBI, we must put to the FBI, who are these individuals? They should disclose to the judge, who are these individuals that the contents of the record constitute security threats to? What are those security threats and how real are they? When was this investigation conducted and how long would this purported security threat linger? And then the bigger question should be, can a single record or investigation report contain names of persons, contain how these records constitute security challenges to these persons, and that same record contain security strategies that require protection or secrecy? What kind of record is that containing all this information? And assuming there is such a record, are they able to also ensure, because even at the last hearing, they refused to disclose to the court whether or not the president was even a subject, President Tinubu was even a subject of investigation. So do they have a pact? Do they not have a pact with President Tinubu, assuming President Tinubu decides to come out today and say, oh, I was part of the investigation, this was what happened during the investigation? They do not have the authority to enter such a park. And so it appears to be a convenient disposition to say that records that are very pivotal to the integrity of the Nigerian state are secret because it constitutes threat to certain persons and reveal security strategies. It's a rather convenient position to maintain by the FBI.
Yeah, we need to go on a break, but you mentioned something that previously a judge had ruled that the FBI and DEA had failed to establish a sufficient basis for refusing even to confirm whether Tinubu was a subject of investigation. So when we come back, I'll be asking, does this latest application amount to the agencies trying to achieve indirectly what the judge previously rejected? When we come back, we'll take your response. Thank you very much for staying with us. I will now continue our conversation with Abdul Karim. Abdul Karim, you can go ahead with your response, please.
Yes, thank you. So previously, the FBI had refused to disclose certain information, and when the court asked them to justify their refusal to disclose this information or produce this record, they gave certain reasons, but the judge was not convinced. He said they had not given cogent and cognitive reason enough for them to refuse to produce the records that has been demanded. Now, they have engaged another procedure of law to say, but the reason why they cannot disclose the records, they want to make those reasons known to the court ex parte. It means without the notice of the other parties. And so, in my view, I think this is another way of engaging a procedure to accomplish what you have previously failed to accomplish. You had previously attempted to withhold information or records or documents from the court and the other parties, and the court said your reason for refusing to release the records that was asked of you was not cogent enough. And now they have come to say they want to disclose the reason which they had previously disclosed openly. Now they want to disclose it ex parte. I think that the court should not allow the FBI or any party in the proceeding to engage technicalities in forestalling proceeding. The record should be made open and available to the court. The court has the capacity as an agent of the state to determine whether those records actually constitute threats to any individual, whether those records actually reveal security strategies that would not be good for the state. And like I said, the FBI and all the parties involved must know that this controversy is beyond the FBI, is beyond the United States of America. It extends to the Nigerian citizens, of course, whose mandate give legitimacy to Tinubu's presidency.
Before we go, regardless of the outcome, does any of this have legal consequences for Tinubu's presidency, or is it just strictly perhaps a U.S. Administrative Freedom of Information Act matter?
Well, it has, when you talk about legal, it certainly has political consequences, as it may, in one way or the other, vindicate him or vilify him and give a cast aspersion on his political image or integrity. But legal implication, by the Nigerian laws that we have, if a person is convicted for a crime, the person would not be qualified to contest in an election. And so we don't know the extent of the records, and that is why it is important that Nigerians are not left in the dark. The records and the extent of the culpability of President Bola Tinubu would actually impact on his legal capacity to continue to be or run for the office of President of Nigeria, because there are crimes that are existing within our laws that are not just crimes outside the Nigerian laws, but once a person commits certain act and it is established within another jurisdiction that he committed such act, there are certain crimes that are also recognized by the Nigerian laws and so can now occasion or give room for prosecution. But then there are other legal intricacies, especially as he enjoys immunity as president. But for legal implications, the legal implications are not as clear as the political implications as it is currently. If it were the time he was contesting earlier, where he did not enjoy some level of immunity, constitutional immunity as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the legal implications would have been stronger. But now, they may not be as strong as they would have been.
All right. Thank you very much for the insights you've provided to this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Felicity.
Coming up, Peter Obi kicks off 2027 presidential campaign, declares Nigeria must work. We have details after this break. Thank you for staying with us. The campaign has begun. The presidential candidate of the Nigerian Democratic Party, Congress rather, NDC, Peter Obi, has challenged other contenders in the 2027 presidential election to come before Nigerians and openly defend their records and plans for the country. Speaking on Friday at a press conference to formally launch his campaign, Obi said presidential aspirants must engage citizens directly rather than speaking through representatives or surrogates. He said Nigerians deserve the chance to question candidates, examine their records, and assess their plans.
I consider myself quite privileged to be one of those seeking your mandate to deal with these challenges facing our country today. I entered this contest with one firm conviction: Nigeria can work and Nigeria must work. Leadership must deliver results. My successful private sector experience, studies in institutions of repute on policy and business matters, and my service as governor of Anambra State have shaped my understanding of public leadership. Governments must manage resources responsibly, set clear priorities, and measure the outcome of its decisions. Public office is not a reward. It is responsibility to the people.
Still on this year's election, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it will conduct a nationwide mock accreditation exercise in November as part of preparations for the 2027 general election. The exercise will test the bimodal voter accreditation system, beavers, and other electoral equipment. INEC Chairman George Nwabueze disclosed this while receiving a delegation from the Canadian High Commission in Abuja. Nwabueze said the commission would require about 1.4 million ad hoc personnel to conduct the election across more than 176,000 polling units nationwide. He also announced the establishment of an artificial intelligence unit to support electoral processes and counter emerging threats. Meanwhile, Nigeria's 2027 general election is already under scrutiny as election observers has warned that insecurity, declining public trust, and political tensions could undermine the credibility of the polls. The International Republican Institute urged INEC to clarify procedures for electronic results transmission failures, including when physical EC8A forms should become the primary basis for collation and how discrepancies will be resolved. They urged authorities to step up efforts to curb vote buying and election-related violence while calling on security agencies to identify vulnerable areas and implement targeted measures to safeguard voters and election officials.
Persistent insecurity and election-related political violence erodes confidence in the electoral process and depresses voter participation. Where voters, candidates, and observers cannot participate without fear of violence or intimidation, technical improvements and legal safeguards have only limited effect. Taken together, these political and security pressures risk further deepening an existing deficit of public trust in electoral institutions and the credibility of the broader electoral process.
INEC should communicate operational decisions, procedural changes, and contingency measures through consistent and authoritative channels. When changes or exceptional measures are required, the Commission should explain them promptly to stakeholders and the public to build confidence and counter misinformation.
Political parties should hold party officials, agents, and supporters accountable for vote buying and voter inducement. National and state leadership should communicate clear expectations throughout party structures and ensure they are enforced down to local and polling unit levels, including sanctions, fines, and prosecution of civil and criminal offenses.
Still on politics, the Osun State All Progressives Congress governorship candidate Bola Bamiji has met with President Bola Tinubu at the presidential villa in Abuja following the APC's loss in the recently concluded governorship poll. Speaking after the meeting, Bamiji described the visit as a strategic engagement focused on consultation and guidance, while emphasizing the need for unity and a peaceful political environment in the state. He called on supporters and residents of Osun State to remain calm and avoid violence, stressing that politics should be about the people and their collective progress.
I met with Father, the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and what Baba said was that the most important thing is to run every election with a peaceful mind. It is important for us that we Nigerians have to know that government is about people, and it's about people, and it's about people. And because it's about people, it is important that we need to be peaceful. And I want to appeal to our people in Osun that they need to be peaceful. For now, the APC is still examining the books, and by the time we spread our sheet, we'll be able to get back to the public, at least what our own opinion and what decisions we want to take. But the take-home is that they should be calm.
The Coalition of Public Interest Lawyers and Advocates has issued a 7-day ultimatum to the Independent National Electoral Commission and the Nigerian Police Force to take decisive action on alleged inciting political statements, promoting violence and killings before and during the recently concluded Osun governorship election. The group says that videos and statements allegedly made by some political actors raise questions of possible criminal liability under the Electoral Act. The lawyers are demanding that the police investigate the allegations, authenticate the videos, identify those involved, and establish the circumstances surrounding the reported killings.
We demand that the videos to be subjected to proper forensic authentication to be sure that what was recorded in the video that made rounds is exactly what was said. And the persons who are captured in these said videos should be invited for questioning, witnesses should be interviewed, and prosecution should follow where necessary. International community is also called to ensure that they put proper check on INEC to ensure that these persons are indeed investigated. On this basis, we're giving INEC and the Nigerian Police Force within 7 days to act swiftly in carrying out thorough investigation, give public reports, and take actions where necessary by carrying out in the necessary prosecution of all these individuals mentioned.
Away from politics for a moment, the trial of 4 men facing charges of alleged kidnapping, cultism, armed robbery and unlawful possession of firearms has entered its final stage in Edo State. A special criminal court has fixed September 29 for judgment after both the prosecution and defense adopted their final written addresses. News Center's Edo State correspondent Ameze Bazuaye reports.
The high-profile kidnapping trial linked to an alleged abduction along Vegetable Market Road in Benin City is now awaiting judgment. At the resumed hearing, The Special Criminal Court adopted the final written submissions presented by both the prosecution and defense. Counsel to the first, second, and third defendants, Amechi Wonzo, alongside counsel to the fourth defendant, Felix Imasuen, urged the court to dismiss all 11 charges. The defense argued that the prosecution failed to establish a credible link between the defendants and the alleged offenses, insisting the case was not proved beyond reasonable doubt.
The court has been diligent in his taking down all the proceedings, as it were. Finally, today we have addressed the court, and the court has taken a date to come back for judgment. So that is where we are for now. With every sense of humility, it went well. I have done my job as a counsel. I have defended my clients within the capacity which I have, and I have also made the court to understand why they should be discharged and acquitted for all the 11 counts charged, as it were.
These are condition precedents and the law. We want to know how the prosecution intends to navigate and explain to court why the investigators never did a thorough job.
The prosecution, however, maintained that the evidence presented throughout the trial was sufficient to sustain the charges. Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice Roland Otaro SAN asked the court to convict the defendants on all counts.
From the evidence on record, we prove all the ingredients of all the offenses beyond reasonable doubt. The evidence is there. The records are there. And that is why I started the Supreme Court authorities, and even from the evidence or record, that we prove all the ingredients of the offenses beyond reasonable doubt.
With final judgments concluded, the court adjourned the matter until September 29, 2026 for judgment. The four defendants, Marvelous Isaac, Wisdom Michael, Rufus Emete, and Gift Raphael, will remain before the court, pending the verdict in Edo. For News Central, Ameze Bazwaye.
Sameze. The federal government has declared Tuesday, August 25, 2026, a public holiday to commemorate the birth of Prophet Muhammad. The declaration was announced Friday by the Ministry of Interior. Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Magdalene Ajani, said the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunjiojo, extended greetings to Muslims in Nigeria and across the diaspora. The minister urged Nigerians to reflect on compassion, humility, and service. On Friday, featured tonight, for some children, their journey to the classrooms begins with a hurdle most of us never had to face. Stairs they cannot climb, doors they cannot easily pass through, and lessons not designed with them in mind. But beyond the barriers is a simple aspiration to learn, to belong, and to be given the same chance to dream. Now, some schools are rewriting the rules, adapting classrooms, teaching methods and attitudes to ensure no child is left behind. My colleague, Sumaya Abubakar, has this report for us.
Michael, can you type? Use your fingers. Every child deserves a chance to learn, and for children living with disabilities, that opportunity often depends on how well a school can accommodate their needs. From accessible classrooms to adapted teaching methods and learning support, inclusive schools are working to ensure disability does not become a barrier to education.
We always say there's ability in disability, so they should not just be outcasts. They are human beings, and we can see their ability. They do different things. Like even when you think they cannot do, they listen, they understand. Even when they are not making any sound, they are learning.
We teach them to be independent and to have the basic knowledge necessary for them to have, so that when they grow up, they won't rely on anyone for their daily living.
What we need is intervention. What we need is education. What we need is therapy. And what we need is for society to recognize these children, because they have gifts. Some of them have gifts that surpasses, would surpass what you have and what I can do.
Can you type? Use your 2 hands. What are you doing? Nigeria's inclusive education policy promotes the removal of barriers that prevent children with special needs from accessing quality education. But parents and advocates say gaps remain, particularly in facilities, specialized learning materials, and teacher training.
We have schools that would tell you that, no, you can bring your child, but they actually don't know what it takes. They may read about it. Reading about it is different from handling a child. Parents actually find it hard to come out. There are some that it may be because of the finances. And at the end of the day, they tend to go and lock up a child because they can't actually fund the educational aspect of a special child.
We need to encourage parents to make sure that they too advocate for their children and get their children enrolled in schools. Public school system is always an option when you don't have the funds, right? But if you do have the funds, then you, of course, go to a private school.
Inclusive education is not simply about having children with special needs in the classroom. It is about ensuring they can learn, participate, and receive the support they need to thrive alongside their peers.
Experts say stronger implementation of existing policies, better teacher training, and investment in accessible facilities are key to expanding inclusive education.
We need to make sure that the schools are being held accountable for actually practicing what inclusive education is. And yes, if they do have these children in their classrooms, are they differentiating instructions? Do they have the tools that they need to deliver instructions to these children? Are they using the multi-tiered level? So we need to make sure that we are teaching and training these teachers on how to conduct their educational practices within the school systems where they are.
The efforts are just beginning to pick up, however, very slowly. So we need the government to pay attention to this category or subcategory of persons because they are part of us, they're members of the society, and they don't need much. All they need is an enabling legal framework that will also provide certain strategic supports for them.
Oh, look for letter V.
For these learners, inclusion can open more than the classroom door. It can open the door to opportunity. In Abuja, for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
Now, beyond our shores and to one of our headlines tonight, a potentially unprecedented El Niño is threatening to deepen an already mounting global humanitarian crisis, putting millions at greater risk of drought, extreme heat, floods and displacement. UK forecasters say the 2026 event could push Pacific Ocean temperatures more than 3 degrees Celsius above normal, a level described as unprecedented in modern records. The consequences could be severe, particularly across vulnerable regions, with droughts threatening food and water supplies, while extreme rainfall and storms increase flood risks. Already, wildfires have displaced hundreds of thousands across Europe, while severe drought grips parts of the world. And with human-driven climate change intensifying the threat, 2027 could become the hottest year ever recorded. Up next is business, sports and entertainment news. To stay with us.
In business, Dangote Petroleum Refinery has increased its premium motor spirit gantry price by 20 naira to 1,185 naira per litre, effective midnight Friday, August 21st, 2026. The adjustment comes barely 2 weeks after the refinery reduced the price to 1,165 naira. And despite the hike, Dangote's new rate remains below prevailing Lagos depot prices. Integrated Oil, African Terminals and NIPCO sell at 1,200 naira per litre, while Pinnacle sells at 1,190 naira. It is also 33 naira below the landing cost of 1,218 naira per litre set by the major Energy Marketers Association of Nigeria. Marketers say final pump price will depend on logistics, transportation, and margins. Industry watchers expect retail prices to adjust upward in coming days as depots align with new refinery price. And it's a full trading week of losses on the NGX. The Nigerian equities market extended its losing streak even further on Friday today, with the all-share index declining another 29 basis points to close at 239,351.16 points. And we still have the market capitalization at 154 trillion naira. If you take a look at sectoral performance, we are seeing, of course, the pressure, broad-based pressure. Oil and gas, in an interesting turn of events, is up 2.54%. Banking had the strongest steep on the market, down 80 basis points. Insurance is down 69 basis points, and consumer goods is down 3 basis points. Industrial goods, again, flat. That's as much as we can take on business tonight. I am Joanna Mustafa. Up next, sports with Okwe.
In sports news tonight, Nigeria's senior men's basketball team, D Tigers, have been ranked third in the latest power rankings ahead of the second round of the 2027 FIBA Basketball World Cup African qualifiers. The second round will take place in Rhodes, Tunisia and Dakar, Senegal, from August 27th to the 30th. The Tigers have bounced back from a shaky start, improving to a 4-2 record after an impressive 3-0 run in Luanda last month. Head coach David Fitzdale has also strengthened the squad with players boasting top-level international experience. Nigeria will face Cameroon, Cape Verde and rising power South Sudan in Group E, with the team aiming to maintain its improved form and secure positive results as it pushes for qualification for the 2027 FIBA Basketball World Cup. In boxing, Tyson Fury says his longer-awaited heavyweight fight with Anthony Joshua may not happen, blaming Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn for demanding more money. Fury and Joshua are expected to meet on November 20th, with Madison Square Garden in New York reportedly emerging as a possible venue. However, Fury accused Hearn and Joshua of seeking additional funds from Saudi boxing chief Turki Al-Sheikh, despite already benefiting from several deals. Hearn previously said Joshua's contract requires the fight to take place in Britain, although reports this week suggested an agreement had been reached for New York. Fury, 38, warned he could fight another opponent in November if negotiations with Joshua collapse. The proposed bout is one of boxing's most anticipated heavyweight clashes. Now, in football, FIFA has handed Argentina midfielder Leandro Paredes a 10-match international ban and a $90,000 fine for his role in clashes with Spain players after the World Cup final. Paredes grabbed Eric Garcia by the throat and wrestled Gavi to the ground after Spain's 1-0 extra-time victory at MetLife Stadium on July the 19th. Nahuel Molina received a 7-match ban and $90,000 fine, while Thiago Almada was suspended for 1 match and fined $30,000. Argentina coach Roberto Ayala was also banned for 3 matches. Spain's Gavi was handed a 1-match suspension and $30,000 fine. Argentina must also play their next 2 home matches at 50% capacity with 1 match suspended. The AFA was fined $321,000 for multiple disciplinary breaches. The AFA says it will appeal the sanctions. That's it on Sports News Tonight. I'm Okweoluwa Adebari. Entertainment is next with Edewo.
And in entertainment news today, Wizkid and Asake's collaborative single, Jogodo, is reportedly topping Nigeria mid-2026 streaming rankings, emerging as the country's most streamed song in the first half of the year. The track has continued to dominate streaming platforms and fuel conversations among fans since its release, proving that the star behind the collaboration. Now, for Wizkid and Asake, the impressive performance adds another major achievement to an already successful year. With 2 of Nigeria's biggest Afrobeat stars joining forces, Jogodo has clearly struck a chord with listeners and is further cementing its place as one of the biggest songs of 2026. We say congratulations to Big Wiz and Ashake on that level. Now let's move international. There's a new legal battle brewing between Netflix and Christian metal band Demon Hunters over the hit animated K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, the band has reportedly sued Netflix, alleging that the movie title and branding infringe on its established identity and could confuse audiences about its music and brand. Netflix is now set to respond to the claims in court, adding another unexpected legal twist to one of the streaming platform's biggest entertainment successes. Speaking about names and how they can slightly confuse. But that's all we have in entertainment tonight, by the way.
And that's all we have for you tonight. But before we go, here's a quick recap of our top stories. Tinubu orders arrest, suspends 3 permanent secretaries as ICPC uncovers fake agency in Office of Secretary to the Government of the Federation. FBI asks U.S. courts to keep records linked to alleged drug trafficking probe involving President Bola Tinubu secret. We also told you that UK forecasters are warning of potentially record-breaking El Niño with heightened risk of extreme weather worldwide. Do send us your eyewitness report or remarks, comments on our programming. Share it with the numbers showing now on your screen. We are on all social media platforms as well. You can use that at News Central TV. You can watch live programs on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Apple TV, and on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.